Today I'm going to look at TTArtisan AF 35mm f1.8 ED Mark II. It has been about a year since TTArtisan introduced the AF 35mm f1.8, and now it's time to release version 2 of that lens. I liked the first version when I reviewed it and enjoyed taking pictures with it. They have tried to improve the lens since last year, and therefore we can see a couple of changes. But have they succeeded? This is what we are going to find out. I tested this lens on a 21.5 megapixel Nikon Z FC. You can find this review as a written blog post on our blog site, where you'll find detailed test charts on sharpness and other characteristics. Most of the sample images in high resolution are available on a separate site. I leave links to the blog post and the sample images in the description below. A big thank you to TTArtisan for kindly providing this lens for review and testing. That said, this review remains completely independent and unbiased. As mentioned before, there has been a version of this lens from 2024. It was about 1 cm longer and 25 grams heavier. Another difference was that it had a minimum focusing distance of 60 cm instead of Mark II version's 40 cm. Here are the specifications of this lens. You can pause the video to take a closer look or check out our blog post for a more detailed overview. Handling and build quality. The lens has a solid all-metal build, much like TTArtisan's manual lenses, which is always a good thing. It keeps things simple with just one physical control, the focusing ring. Even though this is an autofocus lens, you can still use the ring for manual focus when needed, and it feels smooth and well damped. It's slightly smaller than the first version, but still large enough to find easily without taking your eye off the viewfinder. Plus, you can customize it to adjust aperture or exposure compensation, adding some extra flexibility. The lens uses internal focusing, so it doesn't extend and the front element doesn't rotate during focusing, a nice plus, especially for filter users. Instead of a standard rear cap, TTArtisan includes a USB-C dock, which lets you update the lens firmware easily. The lens hood is fairly basic, made of plastic, and features an unorthodox design that is not completely round. At the time of testing, there was no firmware available for the Z-mount version, so I couldn't test it. Optical features. Let's start with sharpness. To assess it, we examine 3 areas: sharpness near the infinity mark, the portrait distance, and in close-up shot. For the infinity sharpness test, we look at 3 areas of the image: center, midframe, and corner. Sharpness is excellent in the center right from f1.8, with very good midframe performance. However, the corners are only usable at this aperture, not that good. Stopping down improves sharpness across the frame, and by f5.6, both the center and midframe are excellent, with the corners catching up to a good level. The best corner sharpness comes at f11, while f16 introduces a slight drop in sharpness across the frame due to diffraction. Sharpness at portrait distance. Let's look at the points of interest for portraits at the portrait distance. The center, the center's inner periphery, and the center's outer periphery. Portrait sharpness is very good at all points, but it seems that the lens suffers from field curvature. The inner circle is a little sharper than the center and the outer circle. Even here, the sharpness improves everywhere by stopping down. Sharpness at close-up distance. The lens shows noticeable spherical aberrations at its minimum focusing distance, resulting in barely acceptable but still usable sharpness. Stopping down improves things significantly. By f4, sharpness is very good, and at f8 it reaches excellent levels. I initially suspected that the weak wide-open sharpness might be due to the improved close focus capability from the first version's 0.6 meter. as performance is visibly worse than the first version at wider apertures. To be true, I retested it at the same 0.6 meter minimum focusing distance as the first version had, and as it turns out, sharpness is significantly better at 0.6 meter, actually better than the first version, except at f1.8, where performance still lags. This suggests the presence of spherical aberrations at wider apertures. Lens distortion. The distortion is very well controlled. Vignetting. The TTArtisan 35mm f1.8 Mark II shows quite noticeable vignetting for a standard lens. It's easily visible, and while stopping down helps, it remains apparent even at f5.6, especially in bright scenes like snowy landscapes or clear skies. Focus shift and aberrations. The lens exhibits focus shift, which becomes clearly noticeable when I refocus at f4. It also shows clear signs of spherical aberrations. Additionally, there is some longitudinal chromatic aberration, though it's not very pronounced, and reduces significantly when the lens is stopped down by 2 stops. The lens shows only a negligible amount of lateral chromatic aberration, which can easily be ignored. Here you can see a 100% and 200% crop of the image corner, both uncorrected and corrected. As you can see, there is barely any visible difference. Flare resistance. Flare resistance isn't the worst I've seen, but there is definitely room for improvement. The lens exhibits both veiling flare and ghosting. Comma. The TTArtisan 35mm lens shows mild comma, which remains visible even when stopping down by 1 or 2 stops. To eliminate it completely, you'll need to stop down to f11, where it matches the performance of the Mark I version. Sun stars. Despite the odd number of aperture blades, the lens starts producing sun stars at f5.6. By f8, they are nearly well defined, and at f11, they are very distinct. In this regard, it outperforms the older version. Focus breathing. The TTArtisan 35mm f1.8 Mark II also suffers from significant focus breathing, similar to the previous version, which may be a concern for filmmakers. Bokeh. Let's take a look at the out-of-focus background and bokeh we can get from this 35mm at its maximum aperture f1.8 on an APS-C camera. First, let's check out the bokeh balls. The bokeh balls are nicely shaped and evenly lit, with no noticeable onion rings. However, there is a distinct double-edged rim around the balls, and it has a slight color to it as well. It also takes cat's eye shape towards the edges and the corner of the frame. Let's look at the background blur at some different distances. Bokeh is a subjective thing, of course. Personally, while it's perfectly fine, I find the bokeh a bit busier than I would like. It's not overly distracting, but it doesn't fully match my taste. That said, feel free to check out the images here and in the sample gallery to form your own opinion. Conclusion on sample images. Well, first things that I like. Price, sharpness in most of the image, distortion control, chromatic aberrations control, sun stars, and the size of the lens. The things that are not bad, but they are not good either: corner sharpness, bokeh, aspherical aberrations, and comma. Things with room for improvement are vignetting and focus breathing. This is a very compact and lightweight lens, with excellent sharpness, though the corners suffer slightly at wide open apertures. Now, to answer the $100 question from our introduction, is this lens better than the Mark I version? The short answer is mostly yes, but not in every aspect. The size, overall sharpness, and sun stars have improved over the already strong performance of the Mark I. Meanwhile, chromatic aberrations, flare resistance, and distortion remain largely unchanged. However, sharpness at f1.8, sharpness near the minimum focusing distance, and vignetting have slightly worsened. All in all, I prefer this version over the first one. It's an affordable lens that offers a lot of quality features for its price, making it an excellent choice for budget-conscious photographers looking for a fast, normal prime to complement their kit zoom. As mentioned earlier, this review is also available in written format on our blog, where you will find detailed test charts on sharpness and other characteristics. I've also listed a few alternatives at the end of the article for those interested. Most of the sample images are available in high resolution on a separate site, and you'll find links to both the blog post and sample images in the description below. If you are thinking about buying this lens, you can support our work by using the links in the description. It won't cost you anything extra or affect the price, but it helps us a little. You can also donate to support the channel. A huge thanks for watching. Your comments are always welcome. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Until the next video, have a fantastic time, everyone.